I would love to welcome all four of our presenters back into our live presentation to answer a few questions from you all. Welcome, everybody. We have Janie and Kelly in now. We're going to get the other two in with us. Awesome. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Great.
Great.
So good to hear from you all. I have a few questions already in the chat. Feel free to enter your questions in the chat now as well, as I'll be pulling them live. And our first question is actually for Evan, and it's from Jita, and she's asking, do you have a framework or any best practices for structuring and finding your sponsorships?
That's a great question, Gita. In the early days when we were just starting out, it was a lot harder because we were a new festival and we weren't known. We weren't well known. But we did find that as we grew as an event, it became easier to attract larger, more national sponsors and partners. So what we did is we started with local, our partners and sponsors started local, but then as we grew, we were able to kind of expand our reach.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's amazing. And sponsorships are hard to come by, but I think once you have a good partner, it makes all the difference. Our next question is for the entire group, so I'll call your name. And this question is from Mary. And the question is, how do you build back your confidence after you have a large failure? And I'll start with Janie.
Well, usually right after a large failure, what it looks like is just debriefing with my team and, kind of dwelling on the on what had went wrong for a little bit, allow ourselves to kind of feel out the failure and rant about it as kind of a catharsis, but then take it as a learning opportunity and taking notes and being like, oh, this is what we can improve on next time. And I think our audience is also very forgiving. So that's great. And yeah, just working with your team and kind of focusing on moving forward rather than dwelling on it too much.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like, Harry, you have a pretty positive attitude about failure as well. I'd love to hear from you.
Oh, I'm happy I think I have a positive attitude. That's great. It could be all the coffee I just drank too. I always like to say, like, there's nothing that a good beer can't solve, but I think it's also the same as Jamie was saying, that like the team is really getting together, having those complaints for the first half hour or so, and then really trying to figure out like, what can we do better next time? Or sometimes admitting to ourselves, you know what, that is not a program that's for us. Maybe this is not the direction we want to go in. And so trying to be honest with ourselves about our own limitations, but also being honest about where we dropped the ball ourselves too. So I think a lot of it comes in the postmortem. And I think the postmortem is always like the best resource for going back to, especially when you're starting to think about planning the next year too.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kelly, how about you? How do you bounce back after a failure?
Yeah, I can't help but second both of them. Really just kind of talking with your team and kind of maybe picking out the few things that were successful, or maybe like a hint of success that you could really lean into for future events, and really leaning into the surveys as well. The surveys, especially for virtual programs, have been super helpful. People get really specific about what they hated or what they loved, and taking that feedback and seeing like what you can do with it is really, really helpful to kind of look forward to the next thing you're going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And Evan, how about you?
Being a husband and wife production team, these mistakes can even go to kind of a next level because,
Sure.
just always talking about these kinds of things. The first thing is just own up to mistakes, to yourself, to your team. And secondly, something that we've always done and has always been important to us is own up to your customer, to your attendees. And we always try to keep a very open line of communication with our attendees, and thanks to like the Eventbrite platform, I mean, it's so easy to communicate with your
I agree. I think open communication makes all the difference. And kind of going back to what you said, Kelly, people are always open with their negative and positive feedback, but especially negative sometimes. And this question is from Andrew, and it's for the whole group, but anyone can answer if they feel free. A lot of this sounds like conflict resolution and having critical conversations. What is your advice for addressing trolls who refuse to talk but blast your org in public? Feel free to chime in.
Oh, I think you got to kill them with kindness. I mean, who? I love waking up the next day and people being like, that wasn't worth all the money I spent, or that event was terrible. But I think having a really good social media team, where you're the person running social media team, I think killing them with kindness and saying, hey, do you want to chat sometime? Here's our email address, and just making it known on the platforms that you're willing to have conversations with people. And so even if those people aren't going to ever call you or email you, that, you know, you put it out there to the world that you do want that feedback. And I think that feedback is important. But there are definitely going to be trolls out there, and you just let trolls be trolls.
Yeah, always.
Same. Just hit them with kindness. We'll respond once or twice, but we don't have time for trolls.
Yeah. Sometimes I find that people don't even realize, oh, there's another person on the other end there. And when you actually do respond with kindness, they end up being taken aback a little bit. And they're like, oh, wait a second, that's a real person. So yeah, totally agree with that. Have another question for the group, but again, feel free to jump in. This question is from Dion, and he asks, how do we establish community partners when most community members want to do their own thing?
I could chime in. So one of Eastwind Books' main strategies is just kind of going directly to folks in our community and organizations. We're located right next to UC Berkeley, and so we have a lot of connections with campus organizations and also doing a lot of cross promotion. So we promote their events while they promote our books in our store, because we have a very specific audience that a lot of other sponsors don't have access to. So I would just say, amplifying their organization, and in turn, they often kind of promote our events and products as well.
Yeah, finding a way to get people in the fold. Go ahead, Kelly. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say too, I think kind of offering multiple entry points for different kind of levels of interest for the community. For us, for example, we have classes for people who've been working in the technique for years, but then we also have classes for someone who just wants a fun activity for a Saturday afternoon. So having those multiple entry points kind of offers a wide way for different community members to enter.
Yeah.
Kelly, I actually really love that response, because I think some nonprofits are just one-person teams, and so you don't want to overwhelm them with a partnership. So kind of giving them ways to enter in and also be supportive to them too, and making it as low stakes as possible sometimes.
Yeah, kind of as Evan mentioned in his presentation, of allowing people to volunteer to get a free ticket to enter the festival. It really gives you a way to increase your staff and your community visibility without having to give up too much or asking too much of them. So love that. Our next question is from Sandy, and she asks, how much time do you typically give attendees to buy tickets before an event starts? And I just want to say as well in the stream, feel free to ask these people questions about their ticketing and the timeline of things, because they've really built these out amazingly. But I'd love to hear from any of you on how much lead time you typically give your attendees.
We'll typically put our events live on the internet 3 to 4 months in advance, and that's kind of like what we target. And that gives our social media pages that we've created for the event time to really build traction and get followers. Now, of course, for some cities, we might not sell. We might sell 20 to 40% of our tickets the week prior to the event, but at least we have that audience that we can market to.
Yeah, similarly, we try to get them up as soon as we can. We release our programming on a pretty regularly, seasonal schedule, but oftentimes that 1 week to 2 week out period is when people are like, oh, I need something to do. So that's kind of, we'll try to have the tickets up as long as we can, but do some big marketing pushes right before the events.
For us, it's usually about a month, 1 or 2 months before the event, that we would have the Eventbrite link up and the RSVPs and all the publicity done.
Yeah, we try to do it seasonally too, but there's always this event's in a week, so can we get this on the website in the next 2 minutes? So that happens a lot of the time too. But it's always interesting, because sometimes you think, oh, if I put it in advance, that's how we're going to sell out. But sometimes we put events on the week before and they still do really well. So sometimes it just depends the event itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And you all have a different event style and the way that things are set up. So I think it really is individualized based on the market and the event that you have. But these guys are all gold standard Eventbrite users, and we're just so happy that you took the time to present for us today and to chat with all of our attendees here in the stream and for sharing your experiences with us. So thank you guys so much. We really appreciate your time.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having us.
Great, thanks for having us here.
Of course.